because we saw them adjusting the pieces. Everything is building up to this moment. Nordebek Abdusattorov needs to win if he wants to take the match to further tie breaks. And then we see him opening with the queen's pawn.
Knight f3 is such a,
e6.
Such an annoying move to see.
Okay, and then we see
Bishop g4 check, which is known as Bogo Indian, right? But after Bishop d2, he did not trade but go to e7, Knight c3, and castles short. You pretty much allow White to go e4.
Well, then the play gets very complicated, and surely that is what Abdusattorov wants, because after e4, d5, then we have one of the sharpest lines. And, well, Yakubboev says, absolutely, game on. I'll take your challenge. e4 is there.
Yeah, but that's what you do, I think, when you're in a must-win situation. You should not ignore the most principal moves. That's very kind of harmful mindset. So you say, okay, this is dangerous, I'll play something safer, and you end up in a worse position, like with no chances, strangely. And so I totally support going e4, and then what would you think to be?
CD Indian, where you have a choice, you can push forward.
Yeah, like you go e5 immediately or take first. Yeah, okay, he's gone e5, knight e4, then he captures on d5. Knight takes d2 was played.
CD5 and d5, bishop d3, knight takes d2, yes.
So he takes, bishop d3, knight d2,
queen d2, knight
c6. And knight to c6.
Looking good for white. Well,
depends. Like,
we still have that imbalance, right? Black this time has the bishop pair, and white does have a fantastic bishop on d3.
d4 is a potential target, and from my experience in Bogo Indian, that f4 would mean that white's center is completely secure. Like with the pawn on f2, it's not as much. So castle short.
Bishop g4. And the bishop came out to put pressure on the center immediately. You can pull the bishop back to e2. Yeah, and he does.
Bishop e2, f6.
Very thematic in this position to play f6.
Right.
And now the question is, how is white gonna react? Remember, Yakubboev just needs a draw to take first place in
That's a weak pawn, So h3, bishop h5. Do you go g4 now? That's exactly something that you would like to avoid, right?
Yeah.
But other than that...
Rook d1 or rook d1?
To e1.
Rook
a1
d1.
to... d1. D1, yeah. Okay, so saying like...
h8.
Whenever we trade everything, d5 will be hanging.
Yes.
King to h8.
Very
understandable. Understandable. Question is, can white or should white push the pawn to e6? Because queen d6 now is not that nice because of knight b5, right? So
another
e6.
principal move, rook fe1. Just centralizing the rooks.
Well, also preparing, at some point.
Preparing, right? But also now it's decision time for Abdusattorov. Does he eliminate the tension in the center, trade some pawns, or is he going to... He's going bishop f7. Bishop f7.
But now
it means you can just pull the bishop to f1 maybe. And it's
or b5. Or b5.
Or back to d3. And it's gone to b5.
Bishop to b5, yeah. Because, one thing you'd like when you're happy with the draw is...
bishop h4 and back to e2. And Abdusattorov has to find another move than bishop f7. He cannot afford repetition.
Bishop h5, bishop e2, right. So if you take on e5, what happens? Just knight e5, right?
And are the clock times correct for Abdusattorov? No, he's down to... he's got a serious time advantage, just having used, 20 minutes on the clock.
2
minutes. 2 minutes on the clock.
20 minutes? Can't be.
Did I say 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
2 minutes.
All right. a6 stops bishop b5, and white has to look for another way.
Maybe a3. I think a3 is a good-looking move.
a3, but what's
the idea?
What's the idea? No, you really want to kind of get rid of this tension here,
Is it the time to play G4 now and then bishop F1, bishop G2?
It would change the nature of the game, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And
Queen C2.
Queen C2.
it's very difficult to change when you feel that you're holding the balance. So queen to C2.
C2 is a strange move, I want to say. But yeah, well, you have to make a move, that's the problem, right? You don't see one, but you still... Yeah, well, maybe queen B3 is what you want, yeah.
Yeah, that would be
one other thing,
a direct
right?
threat, attacking 2 pawns. And the question for Nordebek, what to do? Is he gonna just hold the balance and play rook to B8, or is he looking at something much more direct? And no, he dropped the bishop back to F7.
Okay.
Can we play queen D2 back?
Can you also go bishop D3?
Yeah. Bishop D3.
No, it's met by knight to B4.
D3
right?
preparation. Maybe now it's a time. And he did.
Yep, so now A3 is played and bishop D3 is, well, potentially the move white will be looking at.
Bishop G8. And now bishop D3 is the move, yeah?
Now it does not attack, H7 though, so bishop D3, I'd be somewhat worried about like capture on E5, if knight takes D4 is hanging, if pawn takes, rook F3.
So he took F6 first, and after bishop takes, knight,
E6,
knight A4,
bishop F6,
knight A4,
knight to A4,
going to C5.
going to C5. Alright.
Oh, this is good idea as well. Yeah, black is looking a bit too passive.
Yeah, but that was clever from Yakubboev. Like, now this bishop on G8, so black spent some time kind of transposing bishop to G8, and now it doesn't do anything there. And knight C5 kind of highlights the absence of this bishop on the queen side.
And what happened? B something, yeah? B. No.
Queen D6.
Queen
D6 on the board. Knight jumps to C5.
Yes.
And that's the moment where you pretty much have to start giving up. Okay, rook B8 is still there, right? Rook B8 is still there.
Rook B8.
Rook B8, B4.
It's also possible to consolidate that knight on C5, but
Abdusattorov did something else.
Yeah, he retreats the knight to D8.
Oh, knight D8.
Knight D8.
Okay, nice. Knight D8 to finally get the C7, C6 in.
And also
The Carlsbad.
to
the Carlsbad thing.
prepare potentially B6, kicking the knight away.
Yeah, bishop D3, B6.
B6.
And now I think the knight has to retreat.
Wait, if you play B6, I think the pawn is...
Oh, no, knight A6, yeah. This could be...
And he does it. He takes the pawn.
He takes the pawn.
I believe he did not blunder this one.
C5.
Knight A6, knight E6. No, knight E6 for now. Kind of stating that, yeah, your knight is a bit offside, or a lot offside. How about rook E6, bishop E6, queen C7, I know it's not the way you play for, when you need a draw.
You might need to do that because the knight is in danger of getting trapped there on the edge of the board. C5 is a serious threat.
C5,
and he takes it.
He does it. Rook E6. So now...
And bishop has to take, right? Otherwise it's knight takes C7.
Yep. Bishop takes, and he captures with the queen. No. With the knight. Queen C7. No, queen C7. Knight C7, rook C8. If we lose the knight on a pin.
Yeah, queen C7.
Queen to C7. So now.
Rook A D8.
Rook A to D8. So it's an exchange for a couple of pawns, right? But enough pieces on the board for this one to be super tricky. The queens are not exchanged though. I think white went rook to E1. Kind of keeping the tension.
Yes, rook E1. Okay, so white has 2 pawns as a compensation for the exchange. Whether it's going to be enough, it's another story. But it is a line that white has to take.
It's blitz. So I think you do this simply because you want simply a game. Like with less than a minute on a clock, it's very hard to keep tension. So that's why you go for this sacrifice, even though objectively perhaps it's
and there we
ideal.
Can see the clock time, so we see that Yakubboev is under the minute.
Yep.
Whereas
bishop
Abdusattorov
resets.
has just over 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah,
It's
so
a serious time advantage.
exactly, and Abdusattorov has to keep pressing the time because this is also his chance to level the match.
So do you traded the queens on d6 and then well, it's not that trivial, right? Knight c7, knight b5, I like this one. So knight will be stable on b5 and it also guards the d4 pawn. So it's some sort of a fortress White is trying to build, with a lot of pieces all over the board, just kind of guard pretty much all the squares, guard the d4 pawn, guard, like c2 so that the rooks cannot enter. Still rough though, like the moment black exchanges a pair of rooks, it clarifies the situation a lot.
And the rook does move
So
to
rook
an
goes to
open
c6,
line.
knight b5.
You know what happened after rook e6? Maybe White should dodge the trade, right?
Yes,
Yes.
rook e6, you'll move the rook to c1.
But Abdusattorov has to be careful. Knights are notoriously crafty pieces in time trouble. They can move backwards, forwards. They have this sideways
G5.
motion as well. And g5.
g5.
Abdusattorov,
For the king?
yeah, taking space. The king is now going to jump
space, yeah.
forward to g7,
King f1
king f1,
and king g7. Okay, so
and now another
Knight e5, so he ends up playing knight e5. That's one of the things that g5 does. It does not allow you to support a knight on e5 with f4. Knight e5, rook e6, and I'm afraid he is getting in, a bit of a pin here on the e file, but
well,
once again, it's not as easy.
no, but he's played g3.
Yes,
And Yakubboev just 12 seconds on the clock.
rook e7, knight d6. Knights are tricky, right? You are, Jovi. So pawn takes and bishop e6, so he stops knight f5 check and attacks the h3 pawn, and White quickly played king to g2, rook to c7, and you have to rush with knight b5, knight d4. Yeah, and I think after that White might have a decent position. Knight b5, rook f7 though, f2 is hanging, rook is aiming at f3.
The knight is going to go backwards to d4, and still White has a lot of trumps that they can use. The pawn on e5 is strong, and Nordebek, just consolidating the position.
Yeah, honestly, I think now is the moment where White is not objectively in danger. I think White's position should be good.
and e6 is on the board, and
d7, just push the pawn e6, and he wins the exchange back if you move the bishop, because knight f5 is here.
that's the idea, yeah.
And he spotted that idea with 7 seconds on the clock. And Yakubboev, he has just 10 seconds.
So now, just don't lose on time. I think that's the only thing which on his mind.
Well, a draw is sufficient to net him first prize, $25,000 and the title of Qatar Masters Open champion, and it's on the board.
But now the material is equal with lots of extra pawns, so technically speaking, White is even winning in this position.
But you don't need to.
You don't need to, yeah. And it's making the job easier.
I think that's exactly what might, kind of play a trick with your mind, that you think, but I'm winning, so let's win. And
Well, there is a threat against the rook on e2, and so that's why it gets moved to the center. And I like Yakubboev's strategy,
E4.
putting his king on a dark square.
Yep.
And
rook e4 is a clever move, right? Because d4 is hanging. After d3, you can just put the rook behind, or rather play f4 first. To take away all the squares from the king. Like d3, no, he doesn't play f4 first, which might have been a better move, to be honest. But yeah, but there is rook d7 as well. Yeah, and you cannot trade, so that's, once again, a move with the tempo. And after rook e8, you know what's going to happen? Bishop take d3. It's cynical. I know, this is by far not the best move in the position, but that's what you do when you only need a draw. Just get rid of any possible danger.
And
Goes back to f6. All right. Can you still...
no, the white king just approaches.
Oh, king f3, so now the king is in the square, right?
Yep.
Bishop e6, and now you can trade on e7, he captures on d3, still not obvious, but
And
yes.
they shook hands.
And that is it.
That is it.
That is it.
2 victories. Nordibek Yakubboev is the winner of the Qatar Masters Open. And what a sensational result for the Uzbek player. I mean, who could have predicted it? This is one of the strongest Opens in the world. Magnus Carlsen is here, Hikaru Nakamura, Anish Giri. But the champion is Nordibek Yakubboev. What a performance.
Well done.
Yeah, well done. Very well done for both of them. And also congratulations to Uzbekistan chess, because this is a phenomenal result. 2 youngsters playing for the title in a tiebreak match ahead of